The Cook. A historical fiction of love, identity and fate by S.J. Jeppsson. Chapter 32. A Courtship of Elegance. 2 days since the arrival of Lord Hollingsworth had passed in a blur of whispered affections, carefully measured gestures, and the slow, creeping sensation that Kate was teetering on the edge of something dangerous and intoxicating. Quickly, Thomas had woven himself into the rhythm of Weatherby House, and beneath his composed demeanour, there was an undeniable urgency. He was well aware that he had only 4 days to win Lydia's heart. The engagement ball was already set for the coming Saturday, the 27th of April, its guest list filled with the names of New York and Boston's elite. The invitations had been sent weeks before Lydia had even boarded the Titanic, a final irreversible stamp upon a match that society already believed to be a certainty. And despite everything, despite the lie she lived every waking moment, Kate felt herself being drawn to him. On the second day after breakfast, Kate was unexpectedly whisked away by Margaret to the city for a visit to the tailor. Final measurements for her gown, final pretenses she could hardly bear. All the while she nodded and smiled, her thoughts circling the same impossible question. How on earth was she going to get out of this? Meanwhile, back at Weatherby House, Thomas had sought out Charles in his study. The room carried the familiar scent of pipe smoke and oak polish, the kind of place where every conversation seemed to carry the weight of generations. Charles looked up from his correspondence, brows lifting in mild surprise.
"Viscount,"
he greeted, setting aside his spectacles.
"You've the look of a man with purpose. What can I do for you?"
"Mr. Weatherby,"
Thomas began, straight-backed but unpretentious.
"I hope you'll forgive my boldness in calling unannounced. There's a matter I wish to speak of plainly, you see."
Charles lowered his pipe, his curiosity piqued.
"Please, do continue."
He offered the chair across from him, but Thomas stayed standing, nerves refusing him the luxury of composure. He drew a measured breath.
"It's regarding your daughter,"
he began.
"Our family's arrangement is well known, but I'd prefer not to rely solely upon duty or expectation."
He paused briefly, hesitating, then continued.
"Rather, I should like your permission to propose formally, not merely for propriety's sake, but because she deserves to be asked. I would like your permission to ask Miss Weatherby for her hand properly in person."
Charles regarded him for a long moment. The faintest smile touched his mouth, though it didn't quite reach his eyes.
"A rare sentiment in our circles,"
he said at last.
"Most men would be content with a contract and a signature."
He studied Thomas again, his composure, the hint of nerves beneath his resolve. If he asks her, she might say no, he thought to himself. Not out of defiance, but conviction. Lydia had always followed her heart before her head. And Thomas, God bless him, would honour the arrangement regardless. He'd marry her, tend to her, and spend the rest of his life wondering if she'd ever loved him at all. The tenderness he felt for the boy curdled into doubt, though he masked it with a courteous smile.
"You are already promised, in every practical sense,"
he said, his tone gentle but firm.
"My daughter's future is all but decided."
"Yes, but I'd rather she remember the moment with affection,"
Thomas replied quietly.
"Whatever else this arrangement may be, I'd like her to feel it was entered with respect."
Charles leaned back in his chair, pipe forgotten. The boy spoke like a man who still believed in romance, a dangerous belief in their world.
"You're a good man, Thomas,"
he said at last, his voice gentler now.
"Lydia's duty is to the family, of course, but her happiness does matter to me, more than society would guess."
Thomas inclined his head.
"You have my word. The arrangement with your family and mine will be honoured, but so will her heart."
Charles gave a small nod, reluctant, paternal, and edged with the faintest trace of worry.
"If it's her affection you mean to win, you have my blessing."
God help her, he thought. May she say yes, and may he give her every reason to be glad she did. Thomas intended to win not just Lydia Weatherby's hand, but her trust. He inclined his head in gratitude.
Then I'll make the formal proposal before the ball. Thank you, Mr. Weatherby.
And as he left the study, there was a new determination in his stride. The weight of duty felt lighter, replaced by something that felt, suspiciously, like hope. Reclining in his chair, pipe freshly lit, Charles smiled faintly. It had been a long time since any young man had reminded him that nobility was as much a matter of conduct as of blood. The rain began just after dusk, soft at first, a whisper against the window panes. By the time the lamps were lit, it had gathered confidence, drumming gently on the roof like a hand urging someone to speak. Kate sat alone in the library pretending to read. The fire hissed where a stray drop from the chimney found its way into the flames. Shadows stretched across the floor, long and restless. It had been a long day. Fittings, measurements, Margaret's endless talk of satin and lace. Every pinned hem had felt like a secret tightening around her ribs. She traced the line of the page with one finger, though she hadn't turned it in half an hour. The door creaked softly behind her.
May I join you?
Thomas stood there, without his coat, his shirt sleeves rolled, the faint scent of rain clinging to him.
Of course,
she said, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. He crossed to the hearth, holding his hands out toward the fire.
Your mother insists I'll catch cold if I read in damp clothes,
he said with a faint smile.
But I was restless, and I thought, perhaps, you might be too.
I was,
she admitted. He gestured to the chessboard on the nearby table, pieces still placed mid-game from an earlier challenge.
Shall we finish what your father and I started this morning?
I doubt I'm a worthy opponent.
Perfect,
he laughed, pulling out a chair.
We shall remain equals.
For a time, the only sounds were the fire, the rain, and the soft click of ivory against wood. Evelyn entered once, quiet as a shadow, to freshen the fire and pour tea. She lingered longer than necessary, eyes lowered, her presence a polite wall between curiosity and scandal. Thomas played slowly, studying the board as if every move might reveal something about her.
You think too long before you move,
Kate said at last, daring a smile.
Only because I don't like to lose,
he replied.
And I suspect you're more dangerous than you look.
She tilted her head.
Oh, I assure you, my lord, you overestimate me.
I doubt that.
He laughed heartily, his eyes crinkling at the corners. A gust of wind flung rain against the windows, loud enough to make them both glance up. The firelight gilded his face, softening the sharpness of it, the kind of light that belonged to confessions.
I asked your father today for permission to make a formal proposal,
he said quietly, as though commenting on the weather. Her hand paused above her rook.
Did you?
She said.
I thought it right.
He continued.
Proper.
She stared at the board, though her thoughts had gone blank.
And did he grant it?
He did.
The rain filled the silence between them. Evelyn, halfway to the door, hesitated, then silently withdrew.
I'm glad,
Kate said finally, though her voice didn't sound like her own.
Are you?
She met his gaze. He wasn't smug. He wasn't even proud. There was something else, something near uncertainty.
It's what's expected,
she said.
Proper.
Yes,
he agreed softly.
but I've never been fond of expectations.
He reached for his teacup, his hand brushing the edge of her sleeve. The closeness made her breath hitch, but neither moved away. When he finally spoke again, his tone was lighter.
You're improving, you know.
At chess?
They're making me forget I came here with a plan.
Her lips curved despite herself.
And yet you just told me about it.
Perhaps. I wanted to see if you'd stop me.
She looked down at the board.
Checkmate,
she said softly. He blinked.
Is it?
it is.
He leaned forward to see, then laughed, low, genuine.
So it is. You've quite ruined my moment, Miss Weatherby.
I've spared you from an ill-timed one.
Possibly worse.
He murmured.
You've made me want another.
They packed the pieces away in silence. When she stood to leave, he moved instinctively to pull out her chair. The nearness startled them both.
Thank you.
She said, her voice quieter now.
For the game?
For not saying more than you should have.
Ah.
His smile faded to something fainter.
You think I've shown restraint?
Haven't you?
She asked, teasing.
Only barely.
He responded with a mischievous grin. Rain pressed against the glass in sudden sheets, silver and alive. The thunder rolled again, closer now. Thomas glanced toward the terrace doors.
It's a pity to waste it.
He said.
Waste what?
The storm.
Before she could answer, he strode to the window and unlatched it. Cool air poured in, smelling of lilac and sea salt.
Thomas,
she began. He turned back to her, rain already spotting his shirt sleeves, eyes alight with mischief.
Come now,
he said softly.
Where is that adventurous spirit?
Her lips parted, startled. She'd forgotten that Lydia had written such things, that her letters had painted her as bold and untamable.
It's been rather tempered by circumstance,
she said.
Then tonight,
he said, stepping aside to hold the door open.
Let's untemper it.
The warmth of the library blared into the cool breath of the storm. She hesitated only a moment before crossing to him. The stone was slick beneath her boots, the night thick with the hum of water and thunder. They stood side by side, the lamplight spilling out behind them, rain streaking across their faces.
You'll catch your death,
she said.
Then it will be for a cause worth remembering.
He smiled smaller now, sincere.
Do you ever tire of pretending not to feel alive?
She didn't answer. Instead, she lifted her face to the sky, eyes closed. A laugh slipped out before she could stop it. He laughed too, quietly, helplessly, and for the first time, they looked at one another without pretense. A sound broke through the rain, light paws against stone, a soft whine. From the shadows of the terrace, Winston trotted out, fur already damp, tail wagging furiously.
Winston,
Kate gasped, dropping to her knees as he bounded toward her. The spaniel pressed his nose against her cheek, whining happily, licking the raindrops from her face as though scolding her for every day she hadn't been his. Thomas laughed, crouching beside them.
Well, there's the true romantic of the evening.
I think he's finally ready to forgive me for being away so long.
Kate murmured, breathless, stroking Winston's ears.
And decided you belong here.
Thomas said gently. For a moment, it was the three of them in the rain. Her laughter, his warmth, and the dog's joyful bark echoing softly against the stone. Then Winston darted away with a happy bark, dashing across the terrace in wide, triumphant circles. Thomas laughed, a low, unguarded sound, and without hesitation, gave chase.
Hey there!
He called, his voice breaking through the thunder as the spaniel skidded to a halt and doubled back. The dog's tail wagged madly, delighted by the attention. Thomas bent, arms out, as Winston bounded straight toward him, muddy paws and all. The two collided in a whirl of rain and motion, Thomas laughing as he wrestled the wet dog into his arms. It was an image so unexpectedly boyish, so unlike the poised gentleman she'd come to know, that Kate felt the breath catch in her throat. His dark hair clung to his forehead, rain beading on his lashes. The fine white linen of his shirt, soaked through, clung shamelessly to the lean lines beneath. Not indecent, but honest, in a way that startled her. The sight sent a warmth rushing through her that had nothing to do with the fire waiting inside. He glanced up, still kneeling in the rain, one hand tangled in Winston's wet fur.
Isn't it grand?
He called to her, half laughing, half breathless.
Not so dreadful.
Kate couldn't find her voice. She could only watch him, all easy laughter and dripping defiance, as the rain poured down like absolution. For a fleeting instant, she thought of how Lydia might have adored this side of him, how no photograph or letter could have captured this, the vitality, the warmth, the simple joy of him alive and unguarded. When lightning cracked above, Winston startled and ran back to Kate, pressing close to her skirts. Thomas, breathless, followed him and reached out to her, steadying both of them with one hand.
We should go in,
he said.
We should.
She agreed softly. When the thunder cracked again, she startled and caught his arm. It was instinct, nothing more, but neither of them moved to let go. The moment lingered, fragile as glass. Then, slowly, she drew her hand back.
We should go in,
she whispered.
Yes, we should.
He agreed, and they both laughed. But neither moved. He brushed a raindrop from her sleeve with one finger. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them hummed with everything they couldn't say. At last, he drew a quiet breath.
All right, we should go in.
She nodded, though her pulse still raced. He extended his arm, and she laid her hand upon it with careful grace. When his other hand came to rest over hers, the gesture was so gentle, so instinctively protective, that her breath caught. Together they crossed the muddied yard, their steps unhurried, the storm softening around them like applause fading into silence, until at last he led her back through the open doors and into the golden hush of the house. Together they stepped back into the hall, Winston trotting happily between them, scattering droplets across the marble floor. They had taken no more than a few steps when a voice cut through the hush.
My lady?
Evelyn stood at the end of the corridor, candle in hand, eyes wide. Her expression was the very picture of astonished decorum, lips pursed, brows lifted just enough to convey what she didn't say.
You are drenched,
she managed at last, her tone balanced delicately between reproach and disbelief. Kate bit back a laugh.
It was only a brief walk.
in a monsoon, by the look of you.
Evelyn's gaze dropped pointedly to the hem of Kate's gown.
You've mud on your boots and the bottom of your dress.
Thomas cleared his throat, his usual composure faltering just enough to betray amusement.
Entirely my fault, I'm afraid,
he said.
I convinced Miss Weatherby that the rain was worth seeing up close.
I dare say the laundry staff will agree.
Evelyn replied dryly, though a flicker of a smile betrayed her.
I shall draw a bath, my lady, and perhaps a towel for his lordship as well.
Thomas inclined his head, faintly chastened.
You are most kind.
Don't mistake me for kind.
Evelyn said briskly, already turning down the corridor.
You've both dripped halfway across the floor.
Kate caught Thomas's eye, laughter threatened.
Good night,
Good
my
night,
lord.
Miss Weatherby.
Their voices overlapped slightly, the shared smile between them warmer than the fire waiting in the next room. That night, as she sat at her vanity brushing out her hair, the rain still whispered against the windows. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed softly. Winston, now bathed and mostly dry from his own reluctant washing, lay stretched before the fire, head on his paws, eyes half closed, his fur still faintly curled from the damp. Every now and then, his tail gave a lazy thump against the rug, as though reminding her he was still there. Kate smiled faintly.
You've forgiven me then?
She murmured. Winston's ear twitched. He gave a quiet, contented sigh. She set down her brush, leaning forward on her elbows, watching the dog more than her own reflection. The firelight flickered across them both. Woman and hound, survivors in their own quiet way. For the first time since boarding the Titanic, she felt the smallest shape of home.
Good night, my brave boy,
she whispered. His tail thumped once more as if to answer. She smiled to herself, a single tear slipping unbidden down her cheek. Lydia had loved this dog with all her heart. And somehow, in the quiet warmth of the firelight, Kate felt certain that Lydia would be glad to know that her beloved Winston had felt her spirit once again and chosen to share it. Outside, the rain had softened to a lullaby, tapping gently against the glass. Inside, for the first time in far too long, with Master Winston by her side, she wasn't alone. Thomas always seemed to have a small gift in hand, a token, a gesture, a reason to see her smile. So it wasn't a surprise on the third morning after breakfast, as they paused beneath the climbing roses of the pergola, when he withdrew a gold and ruby bracelet from his pocket.
For you, my Lydia,
he said, his tone warm, confident. Kate hesitated, then reached out, her fingers grazing the cool metal.
Thomas,
she began, but he silenced her with a smile.
No protests. Just accept it as proof of my admiration.
She gazed at the glittering rubies, each one a promise she didn't know how to keep.
You're too generous.
Not at all.
He countered, tilting his head slightly.
I simply enjoy spoiling you.
She found her smile reached her face easier than in days before, but in that moment she wondered. Would Lydia have loved him? Could she? That afternoon, the air was warm enough that the sea breeze carried a softness, a promise of summer just ahead. Thomas led her along a winding path through the sloping lawn until the grass gave way to the stony edge of the Long Island Sound. Evelyn followed a few paces behind, her steady presence a reminder of propriety. The tide whispered against the shore, retreating and returning like an old friend.
Come,
he said. Lowering himself to a smooth boulder, he tugged at the laces of his shoes with the easy confidence of a man who had done such things before without shame.
You'll find it far more pleasant without these trappings.
Kate hesitated, glancing back at Evelyn. The maid had paused on the path above, close enough to see but not near enough to hear. Her gaze was lowered, fixed politely on the horizon, as though she had no interest in the scene below. Encouraged, Kate let out a breath that trembled into a soft laugh. Half nerves, half wonder. She glanced at him, uncertain, then reached for the edge of her gown. Thomas, catching her hesitation, glanced away, turning politely toward the sun, giving her the courtesy of his back. With a furtive glance over her shoulder, she slipped off her satin slippers and peeled down her stockings, her pulse quickening with the thrill of it. The air kissed her bare skin as the cool stones met her feet, grounding her in the impossible moment. Thomas leaned back on his hands, the breeze lifting a strand of his dark hair.
This reminds me of my days at school,
he said with a smile.
My friends and I would steal afternoons by the river, swimming when we ought to have been in lectures. Ah, the freedom.
She glanced at him, the candour unexpected.
You must have been a terror to your tutors.
Only the ones who deserved it,
he replied with a grin.
What of you, Lydia? Did you and your companions raise any scandal in your youth?
The question caught her off guard. She parted her lips, the names rising unbidden.
Mary and Lottie and I.
She stopped, the colour draining from her face. Hastily, she corrected.
That is, my school friends from Boundary Oak. We weren't half so daring as you, I'm afraid.
He turned to study her, eyes narrowing in curiosity, but his smile remained. He chuckled, his eyes lingering on her as he recalled her letters.
Boundary Oak,
he repeated almost fondly.
You must know, I feel I walked those halls beside you. You wrote of it so often. The ivy climbing the walls, the dreadful porridge, the little oak grove where you'd sit to read. You made me envy a school I never saw.
Her heart tightened, relief washing through her. He had given her the cover she needed, and more than that, he remembered. Every detail Lydia had shared in her letters, every scrap of girlhood folded into paper and ink. She forced a smile, though it came tinged with something real.
It seems I was very dull company, writing so often of porridge and schoolbooks.
Not dull at all,
he said gently.
It was your honesty I admired. You never dressed your words to impress me, Lydia. You wrote as though you trusted me.
Kate turned her face to the sound where the sunlight flickered like molten gold across the waves. The words stung, not because they were false, but because she wished, more than anything, that they were true. The breeze carried a gull's cry across the water. For a moment she let herself imagine telling him the truth about Mary and Lottie in Titchfield, about simpler days in a world far removed from grand estates and gilded bracelets. But she pressed the thought down, as she had learned to do. Thomas broke the silence, his voice softer now.
It does seem that we are both caught between two lives. the ones expected of us, and the ones we might have chosen for ourselves.
Her heart tightened at his words. If only he knew. After a time, Thomas bent to pull on his socks and shoes again, his movements unhurried. Then, rising, he extended a hand to her.
Here,
he said, guiding her gently toward the boulder where he had sat. With surprising care, he drew a folded handkerchief from his pocket and knelt before her. One by one, he dried her feet, his touch deliberate, reverent in its restraint. When at last he offered her stockings, she fumbled them into place beneath his steady gaze. Then, without a word, he took each foot in turn and slipped her satin slippers back on, the gesture so intimate it set her pulse racing. His hand brushed her ankle with unthinking care, as natural as if he had been tending her all his life. The warmth of his touch lingered, unstudied, uncalculated, and all the more disarming for it. She thrilled at the sensation, not because it was bold, but because it was tender, and because it revealed a side of him she had not expected to see. When he let her foot rest once more upon the stones, he lifted his gaze to hers. Slowly he took her hands in his, drawing her up from the boulder. They lingered there, close, the sound murmuring at their backs. His eyes held hers, steady and searching, and with a quiet earnestness he said,
"The more time I spend with you, Lydia, the more certain I become of the choice I am making."
For a moment the world seemed suspended, the gulls overhead, the hush of the tide, even her breath, all caught between the safety of silence and the peril of what his words stirred within her. A smile tugged at her lips, though her heart thudded in her chest. She lowered her gaze, then glanced up at him again, her voice carrying a playful lilt that didn't quite mask the tremor beneath.
Well, Thomas, you can't go on hesitating forever. Soon enough, you'll be back in London, buried in ledgers at Hollingsworth Estate, and wondering why you waited so long to choose.
She gave a light laugh, the kind Lydia might have given, before her tone softened.
And when the time comes?
Her breath caught, but she pressed on more softly.
I trust the choices we make will be the right ones. For us both.
For a heartbeat, silence lingered, delicate as spun glass. Then Thomas's lips curved into a smile, gentle and unguarded. He lifted her hands slightly as though he might bring them to his lips, but stopped just shy, choosing restraint over presumption. She let a teasing smile touch her lips.
You don't strike me as the sort of man to waver between choices, Thomas. You seem the kind who always knows exactly what he wants.
For a moment his eyes lingered on hers, steady and thoughtful. Then he shook his head, a wry smile curving his mouth.
On the contrary, Lydia, I seldom choose in haste. Every decision I make comes after much deliberation.
Thomas's eyes did not waver. His grip on her hands tightened, not with force, but with quiet conviction. A slow, resolute smile touched his face, carrying the weight of a man who knew his time was short.
But these next few days...
His voice dropped, quiet and deliberate.
These I shall spend wisely.
Evelyn stood a short distance away, her figure outlined against the slope of the lawn. She could not hear what was said, but she saw enough, the closeness, the way his hands enfolded hers, to know this was no ordinary stroll between young people of rank. Side by side, with Evelyn only slightly behind, Kate and Thomas began the slow walk back toward the house. The air between them changed, fraught, delicate, and charged with something Kate dared not name. At dinner that evening, Thomas was effortlessly charming. He told stories of his time in Vienna and Madrid, his keen wit drawing laughter from the table. Kate found herself leaning in, her own amusement spilling into genuine delight at his perfectly timed remarks. Even Charles Weatherby, a man not easily impressed, seemed to approve, nodding in satisfaction as he watched their interactions unfold. As they dined beneath the glow of gilded chandeliers, Thomas reached for his wine glass, his gaze lingering on Kate.
I must confess something rather scandalous,
he said with a conspiratorial grin. Margaret gasped dramatically, pressing a gloved hand to her chest.
Oh dear, Thomas. Not at the dinner table.
Kate arched an amused brow.
Do tell.
He swirled the deep crimson liquid in his goblet before speaking.
I fear you've bewitched me, Lydia.
He murmured, his voice low but rich with sincerity.
I find myself counting the hours until I see you again.
The words were meant to charm, and they did. But they also terrified her. Kate's breath hitched. The table fell away. The silverware, the fine china, the flickering candlelight, none of it existed. Only him, staring at her with genuine affection, his words not meant for an heiress he hardly knew. But for her, the imposter sitting before him. She swallowed past the sudden tightness in her throat.
You are very kind, Thomas,
she said softly. He reached forward, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek, his fingertips barely grazing her skin.
I mean every word of it.
She should have pulled away. She should have steeled herself. But for a moment, just one, she let herself believe it. Let herself wonder if, in another life, in another world, this could be real.
We'll dance the first waltz together,
he whispered that night as they stood at the base of the sweeping staircase, the candlelight flickering against the marble walls. Kate smiled, though her chest ached.
And the second?
She teased. His eyes darkened slightly, his grip tightening ever so slightly on her waist.
I'll dance every waltz with you, if you will let me.
She laughed softly, though her heart pounded mercilessly in her chest.
I fear that might be considered unseemly, or at the very least unfair to the other guests.
He leaned closer, his voice a tender defiance.
They will simply have to wait their turn to dance with my love, won't they?
My love, she thought to herself. Love. A word that said more than she was prepared to hear. She looked down, imagining a world in which those words could be true, one not bound by borrowed names and fragile facades. Then she lifted her gaze to meet his once more, a flicker of sadness. Or was it hope, passing between them?
Good night, my lord,
she said softly. Thomas hesitated, his expression betraying the faintest fear that he had said too much.
Good night, my Lydia.
He nodded and turned away. As he walked toward his borrowed room in the east wing, Kate's heart pounded, her breath caught between want and worry. The thought that this man might truly be falling for her left her faint, because beneath the thrill, she knew the crueler truth. She was not worthy, not of his name, not of his love, not of the life she was stealing piece by piece with every borrowed word. A little while later, the lamps burned low in Kate's chamber, the soft glow of gaslight flickering against the mirrors. Evelyn moved with practiced efficiency, unfastening the row of tiny pearl buttons down the back of Kate's gown. The hush of the evening pressed in around them, broken only by the rustle of fabric and the faint crackle of the fire. After a pause, Evelyn spoke, her voice careful but laced with mischief.
My lady, might I ask you something?
Kate glanced at her in the mirror, wary but curious.
You may.
Evelyn's eyes twinkled as she bent to ease the gown from Kate's shoulders.
Today, down by the sound,
She hesitated briefly.
Well, I couldn't help noticing Lord Hollingsworth put on rather a fine performance.
Heat rose to Kate's cheeks and she bit her lip.
Performance?
The handkerchief, the stockings, the slippers.
Evelyn gave a soft laugh.
I've seen less ceremony at a wedding.
Kate let out a helpless giggle, covering her face with her hands before lowering them again, sheepish.
Oh, Evelyn. When he touched my ankle, well, it was nothing really, but it quite stole my breath away.
Evelyn's laugh answered hers, warm and knowing.
So I thought, if anyone else had seen it, there'd have been fainting fits all around.
She gave Kate's shoulder a gentle squeeze, her voice lowering, protective.
Be careful, my dear. A touch may be tender, but it can entangle the heart more swiftly than you expect.
Kate met her maid's eyes in the mirror, their shared mirth softened by the unspoken weight between them. Then, as Evelyn loosened the last pins from her hair, they dissolved once more into quiet, conspiratorial giggles, a secret carried between just the two of them. When at last Evelyn curtsied and withdrew, Kate sat a moment longer in the hush of the chamber. A smile lingered on her lips, though it wavered at the edges. How strange, she thought. Only a week ago she had been the maid, laughing in whispers with her mistress, keeping secrets as faithfully as Evelyn now kept hers. The irony cut deep, though it carried its own tenderness. Roles might have shifted, but the rhythm between women, the laughter, the confidences, remained the same. For the last 3 nights since Thomas Hollingsworth had arrived at Weatherby House, Kate had returned to her room with the weight of her deception pressing heavy against her ribs. She would sit before her vanity, staring at her own reflection, trying to reconcile the feelings creeping into her heart. But not tonight. Tonight, the 4th night, as Kate and Thomas strolled through the moonlit gardens after dinner, the scent of blooming roses hung in the air, thick with the warmth of early summer. Fireflies hovered in the hedgerows, their golden glow flickering softly against the manicured paths. Thomas walked beside her in silence for a moment before exhaling deeply, as if steadying himself. Then he stopped. Kate turned to face him, the cool evening breeze catching the hem of her gown as he reached for her hands, his fingers warm and steady against hers.
Lydia,
he murmured, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. She froze. He turned toward her, his eyes shadowed with vulnerability.
you must know. When I was a boy, I always knew that my marriage would be arranged. That was never in question. And I never placed much importance on the topic until I was 22, when my father informed me a suitable match had been made. And then we started writing, and at that time, you were only ink upon a page, but I read your letters until the words blurred. I carried them with me to bed, foolish boy that I was, imagining the woman behind the hand. I saw her bold and fearless, unafraid of the world, and yet, in those same lines, I found someone tender, thoughtful, someone who might scold me one moment and move me the next.
He laughed, as a faint smile ghosted across his lips.
I would close my eyes and think of meeting you, and I would ask myself, could such a woman be real?
He drew in a breath, his gaze steady on hers.
And these past days, Lydia, you have been more real, more astonishing than anything I dreamed. Brave, witty, gentle, everything I hoped for, and more than I deserve.
His voice dropped, the words trembling with certainty.
Truthfully, I cannot imagine my life without you.
And then he stopped, reached for her hands, and sank to one knee.
Even though we've only had this short time together in person, I knew from the moment I read your letters that you were the one for me. Every word you wrote painted a picture of a woman with intelligence, wit, and a kind heart. Everything I had hoped for in a wife. And now, having spent this time with you, I know it beyond any doubt.
He exhaled softly, his blue eyes searching hers.
I hope you feel the same, Lydia. You're my future, my joy, my happiness. Please accept my proposal and be my wife.
Thomas reached into the inner pocket of his waistcoat and withdrew a small velvet-lined box. With quiet reverence, he opened it, revealing the heirloom ring nestled inside.
It was my great-grandmother's,
he said quietly.
And hers before that. 10 generations of Hollingsworth brides have worn this ring.
The band was crafted from platinum, its slender frame adorned with intricate filigree that spoke in whispers of centuries past. At its centre sat a single antique-cut half-carat diamond, catching the soft glow of the candlelight and scattering it in subdued, firelit glimmers. Encircling the diamond, 10 deep blue sapphires, each set with meticulous care, formed a graceful halo, like petals around a star. It had been worn by women who had hosted kings, weathered wars, and carried their titles with grace or grit, or both. It was a ring of legacy, of history, a silent vow passed from hand to hand through 10 generations of Hollingsworth brides, and, as tradition called for, it had been handed down to Thomas from his mother, the Countess, to be gifted to the future Lady Hollingsworth.
This ring was meant to bind you to my family. But I won't give it to you unless you want me. Not the name, not the title, just me.
Kate's lungs refused to expand. Everything inside her screamed, "This isn't right, this isn't real, this isn't me." But around her the night held its breath. And Thomas who had only ever been kind, who looked at her as if she were the most beautiful woman in the world, waited. He drew in a breath, and when he looked up at her, it wasn't with entitlement or expectation. It was with something far softer.
"I know what you wrote,"
he said. His voice was low, careful, as though afraid that speaking too boldly might shatter the moment.
"You said you would not marry for title, and that I respect. I do, and I came here not to persuade you unfairly, not to argue, not to force, only to hope."
He held the box out to her fully now, both hands cradling it like a gift and a question.
"And I don't want you to marry me for duty, or name, or especially for kindness. I want you to say yes, because you want to, because I have somehow, impossibly, changed your mind."
The world felt like it had gone still.
This ring is legacy, but it's also choice. Your choice, my love.
Her voice wavered. She should have said no. But what came out was...
Yes.
A brilliant smile broke across his face as he rose to his feet, pulling her close, cradling and pressing a brief kiss to her trembling hands. With deliberate tenderness, Thomas held her left hand and carefully removed her glove, one fingertip at a time. The silk slipped away, baring the smooth skin of her hand to the cool evening air, and to him. Then, with a touch both reverent and certain, he took the heirloom ring and gently slid it onto her finger. The platinum settled against her skin as if it had always belonged there, the diamond and sapphires catching the light in a quiet, dazzling promise. By the time they returned from the garden, the air inside the drawing room was thick with cigar smoke and conversation. Laughter trilled above the clink of glass and the low hum of the pianoforte. Thomas paused just inside the doorway, Kate on his arm, her cheeks flushed from the cold, and something sweeter. The moment he cleared his throat, the chatter softened. Even the aunts, who had been embroiled in a fierce debate about whether Boston society was superior to New York's, fell silent.
"If I might have your attention,"
Thomas began, his tone measured but warm.
"Miss Weatherby has done me the very great honour of accepting my formal proposal this evening. It is my privilege to let you all be first to know."
For a heartbeat there was stillness. Then the room erupted into applause, laughter and delighted exclamations.
"Oh, my word,"
cried Aunt Winifred, fanning herself with a napkin.
and here we were thinking it was already settled.
Aunt Beatrice, wineglass in hand, leaned toward her with the authority of one who always knew better after the fact.
"I told you, Winifred, there was a reason he looked so nervous before dinner. Mark my words, I saw it in his posture."
Nonsense.
Winifred said.
He's British. They always look nervous.
Across the room, Charles chuckled quietly, shaking his head.
"You'll forgive the Viscount.
He murmured.
He's what one might call a romantic."
"A romantic?"
Beatrice repeated, aghast and delighted all at once.
At his age?
At any age,
Charles replied, amusement tugging at the corner of his mouth.
though I dare say it's done him no harm tonight.
Kate, radiant and a little dazed, caught Charles's eye from across the room. He raised his glass to her, to them, and smiled. God keep them, he thought. May she always be as happy as she looks tonight. Margaret was ecstatic. Thomas looked at her as if she was the most precious gift in the world. Kate smiled, the perfect, poised, practiced smile, but deep in her chest her heart was pounding. She had accepted the engagement. She had done what was expected. He said the ring was legacy, he said it was choice, but he didn't know. It had never been her choice to make at all.